Life has a strange way of teaching. It never moves on until you do. The same patterns appear in different forms, new faces, new jobs, new seasons. But the lesson beneath them remains the same. It waits for you patiently until you finally wake up. You can't outrun your evolution. You can only delay it. The universe, or life itself if you prefer, is not cruel. It's precise. It mirrors back whatever still needs to be understood inside you, and until you see it clearly, it will repeat again and again, disguised as coincidence or fate. The first lesson life repeats is that avoidance is not peace. You can silence the phone, leave the city, block the number, but what you're avoiding will travel with you because it's inside you. Andrew Huberman might say that the brain's default mode network keeps looping unresolved emotional patterns until they're faced. Every avoidance becomes a neural rehearsal for fear. The more you run, the stronger it grows. Peace is not the absence of discomfort. It's the mastery of presence. You don't find peace when everything calms down. You find it when you learn to stay calm in everything. Viktor Frankl would tell you that freedom begins the moment you choose your response, not your escape. When you finally stop fleeing from pain and start observing it, something incredible happens. Pain loses its authority. The story that once controlled you becomes material for your growth. The second lesson life repeats is that you attract what you believe you deserve. Neville Goddard said that the outer world is a mirror, faithfully reflecting your inner assumptions. You might say you want love, abundance, respect, but what do you actually expect? Your subconscious answers honestly. If deep down you expect rejection, the world will oblige. If you expect struggle, it will appear. Life has no choice but to echo your conviction. Napoleon Hill called this the law of belief. What you hold as true in your mind shapes every action you take, every opportunity you notice, every limit you accept. The lesson keeps repeating until you stop asking life to change and start changing your inner stance. You can't receive beyond the level of your self-image. You can only meet yourself in the reflection life offers you. The third lesson life repeats is that discipline is love in disguise. The world tells you to follow your heart, but hearts without structure wander in circles. Discipline is the bridge between intention and reality. Hill would say that persistence is the twin sister of faith. One believes, the other acts. Without both, dreams decay into fantasies. And yet, most people resist discipline because they mistake it for punishment. But the truth is, nothing is more loving than consistency. It's the act of showing up for yourself even when you don't feel like it. Huberman would call this neurochemical mastery, the training of your mind to pursue meaning over momentary pleasure. Discipline doesn't confine you. It frees you from the tyranny of impulse. Frankl learned that the will to meaning gives strength even in suffering. When you wake up to this, you realize that discipline is not control, it's devotion. The lesson will repeat through procrastination, regret, and missed chances, until you understand that freedom without structure is chaos, and structure without purpose is prison. The balance of both is maturity. The fourth lesson life repeats is that relationships are mirrors, not solutions. Every person who triggers you is reflecting a part of yourself you've ignored. The criticism that cuts too deep, the rejection that feels personal, the attraction that feels magnetic, all of it points inward. Goddard would say that everyone is you pushed out. Frankl would remind you that meaning isn't found in the other person, but in your choice of how to love. Huberman would add that the brain's attachment systems rewire through awareness. Until you observe your own patterns, you repeat them. You'll meet the same energy in different faces until you stop blaming others for the reflection they show you. The partner who makes you feel small is revealing your unfinished work with self-worth. The friend who betrays your trust is revealing your boundaries. The parent who couldn't love you as you needed is revealing where you must now parent yourself. When you wake up, relationships transform. Not because people change, but because you stop using them to avoid meeting yourself. The fifth lesson life repeats is that surrender is power, not weakness. There comes a moment when all your effort, all your logic, all your plans hit a wall. You've done everything right, and still, life seems to resist. That's when surrender arrives, not as defeat, but as invitation. Hill might call it the invisible hand of opportunity disguised as failure. Frankl would call it transcendence, the moment you rise above circumstance and discover meaning in what you cannot control. Huberman might describe it as the parasympathetic release, the body's return to balance when it stops fighting imaginary battles. And Goddard would whisper that surrender is faith in motion, the knowing that unseen forces are already arranging what you desire, if only you'd stop interfering. Life repeats this lesson through exhaustion. It pushes you to the edge until you realize that letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means finally trusting. These 5 lessons circle back like seasons. Avoidance, belief, discipline, reflection, surrender. They weave through every chapter of your life, adjusting their form but never their message. At 20, they appear as ambition and heartbreak. At 40, as fatigue and renewal. At 60, as wisdom and peace. But their essence never changes. Life doesn't punish, it teaches. It doesn't trap, it mirrors. It doesn't forget, it waits. And yet most people sleepwalk through the repetition. They complain that nothing ever changes, unaware that they are repeating themselves through new circumstances. The same arguments, the same mistakes, the same fears wearing different faces. The universe doesn't judge. It simply echoes your state of consciousness. When you finally understand that, you stop fighting the reflection and start changing the image. Frankl once wrote that the meaning of life is to give life meaning. That's the ultimate awakening. To realize that every repetition was never meant to break you, but to wake you. Every disappointment was a teacher. Every delay was a test of alignment. Every heartbreak was a mirror showing you where you'd abandoned yourself. When you begin to see through that lens, you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That's when the cycle ends. Huberman might frame it scientifically. Awareness interrupts pattern. When you bring conscious observation to an unconscious loop, the brain rewires. What was automatic becomes optional. That's the biology of awakening. It's not mystical, it's mechanical. But its result is sacred. Freedom. Neville Goddard would say that waking up means assuming responsibility for your imagination. No longer blaming fate or luck, but recognizing that everything in your world was first imagined, accepted, or tolerated within you. To awaken is to reclaim authorship. To look at your life and say, "I created this, consciously or not, and therefore I can create differently." That realization ends lifetimes of repetition in a single moment of awareness. Napoleon Hill would nod and add, definiteness of purpose. Until you decide who you are and where you're going, life will keep testing you with distractions. Each repetition is an exam in disguise, asking, "Are you ready yet to choose?" And Frankl would remind you that choosing meaning doesn't erase suffering, but transforms it. Pain becomes purpose. Loss becomes lesson. There's a quiet moment that comes after awakening. The world doesn't suddenly become easier, but it becomes clearer. You start to notice the lessons as they appear. Gentle nudges instead of harsh repetitions. The people who once triggered you now teach you. The challenges that once crushed you now sculpt you. You begin to move differently, not reacting but responding. Not controlling, but creating. That's the mark of someone who has woken up. Peace not because life got easier, but because perception got wiser. And here's the paradox. Once you learn the lesson, life doesn't stop testing you. It just changes the curriculum. Growth never ends. Awareness just deepens. But the repetition loses its sting. You recognize it for what it is. Love in disguise. Because life, for all its complexity, is not trying to punish you. It's trying to introduce you to yourself. So if you find yourself facing the same pain again, don't despair. Don't curse the cycle. Sit with it. Look closer. Ask what it's trying to reveal. Maybe you're being invited to stop running, to believe higher, to commit deeper, to forgive sooner, to surrender faster. The lesson will stay until you embody it, and when you finally do, it disappears. Not because life gave up on you, but because it finally trusted you with the next one. When you wake up, you realize that nothing was wasted. Every repeated pattern was a breadcrumb leading you home. The people who hurt you were messengers. The failures were initiations. The delays were protection. And all along, life was whispering the same truth in different forms. Wake up. You are not a victim of repetition. You are the author of it, and that's when the pattern breaks. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You no longer need the same lessons, because you've integrated them. You no longer attract the same pain, because you've transformed it into wisdom. You no longer beg for peace, because you've become it. Life's lessons, presence, worth, love, reflection, trust, form the path to awakening. Repeated challenges aren't punishment. They're opportunities to learn. Once you truly grasp the lesson, growth happens and freedom naturally follows.